Are you looking for a Dynasty trade calculator that aligns with your own values? Because if you are, then I have the app for you, the Dynasty GM. The Dynasty GM's Dynasty trade calculator lets you run trade scenarios through the app that align with your own values by allowing you to input your own rank set, the Dynasty Nerds rank set, or your favorite analyst rank set. This is going to make sure the trades align with your values to make sure you're getting the best end of the deal possible. Go ahead and download the app for free in your app store.
Welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast, where we discuss Dynasty strategy, rankings, and all things NFL. So get ready to geek out on fantasy football with your host, Rich Dotson.
And welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Rich Dotson. He's Matt O'Hara.
It's a Yara Mia.
It's Garrett Price.
Yeah, it is.
Talking about pizza pie. Mamma mia. Way to start the show. We're sitting here laughing because we were spending the last 5 minutes before the show laughing. But here we are. Tight ends. Get in there while the getting's good. So tight end buys, tight end sells. It's a little awkward because when you look at the tight end class right now, we kind of talked about this like quarterbacks last week, Matt, when you were under the influence of death. And me and Garrett were having a discussion of the quarterback class. Like, we feel really good with the ADP right now, where it is. So more so with the tight end position, like once you get outside those top guys, you got like the top four, and then you got like the second tier, and then that third tier. I mean, that's like a really long pier. Like, it almost looks like a bridge, right? Like, that's how long it is. Like, meanwhile, it's just a pier.
Did you just turn tier into pier?
I think he just did.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's what.
Yeah, just magically
like
poof.
Blink and you'll
pier.
Blink and you'll miss it. You know what I mean?
So for me, so where's like that value, right? Because obviously, like if you get tight end 15, 13, like you might I got tight end 9. Pretty close to have a shot. So who has the shot? Like if you're gonna have to be and live in that world and live in that tier, right? Like you don't have one of those top guys and you don't have one of those good tight ends. You're like, I have to start one of these guys. Like I need somebody to come in here and get the job done. So like, you're right, guys. Listen, we all know the story is tight end 8 to tight end 18. They're the same guy. But if I have to have one, I want the tight end 8.
I want the guy that's going to be 8, damn it. even if he's 5 points better than 18 at the end of the year, I just want the guy that has more points. All right.
Yeah. For somebody who's lost a lot of games by 1 point, or so in that radius, like I need every fantasy point I could possibly get. Okay. Don't be prude. Don't be prude. Come on. Fuck your lips.
Fuck your get the
come on. Oh, yeah, you're sick. Good call.
Okay, exactly. You don't want any of this, man.
So let's start off. So let's talk about tight end buys. Like let's talk about some guys out here that like you feel has a chance to gamble on that. And my first guy out the gate is Ben Sinnott for the Washington Commanders right now. Has a tight end ADP of 17. And when you look at Ben Sinnott, one, he's a rookie coming off a year, didn't really do too much, but his athletic profile really fits well with what Cliff Kingsbury wants to do with that tight end position out there. So for me, when I look at what Zach Ertz did, and Zach Ertz just came off a tight end 7 year, and we kind of talked to him as a great buy in a preseason, Garrett, because he was really familiar with that Kingsbury offense. Mm-hmm. We have no idea if he's going to go back, if Ertz is going to go back. He's 34 years old, so there's no guarantee he goes back there. We have the one and only Jaden Daniels at quarterback. You mentioned last show about Terry McLaurin going to be 30, going on 31 years old there in Washington. They got to bring another guy. So Ben Sinnott, who the Commanders took in the second round, has a draft pedigree to come in here and be something for the Washington Commanders. When he played this year, him and Ertz run the field. Sinnott played 31.3% of the offensive snaps, while Ertz dominated position at almost 70%. Even Jesse Bates, not Jesse Bates, what is it, John Bates?
John Bates,
yeah. I think it's John Bates. Jesse Bates was an old, super tall dude for the Lions. And he played 48. But when you look at like Ertz, if he moves on, Bates is just more of a blocking tight end. So it really puts Ben Sinnott in a very athletic tight end into a good offensive position for him to step up in year 2. He was very versatile then. He played at Kansas State. 49 receptions, 676 yards, 6 touchdowns coming out. And when he's been on the field, like he's shown that he could be a very athletic, like outline wide receiver. So for me, when I'm chasing upside, I want to try and get a guy that has at least upside, right? I don't want the guy that's going to come in and just give me that who's 27, 28 years old. That's historically been tight end 12 to 15. I got to try and chase something there. And I think the Washington Commanders are willing to invest a second round pick in Sinnott's profile, who we've seen a lot of these kind of tight ends kind of merge into year 2. He had to deal with that injury at the end of the year last year. I think for his tight end 17, which falls at the back end, he's a perfect and like rookie draft kind of caliber you'll get probably in the 3rd round. There's going to be a running back somebody likes, and you want to kind of add some depth to your tight end position. You can probably get him for a 3rd round pick. And for me, again, we kind of talked about this last week, Garrett. Like, if I'm chasing like depth of my roster, I want like the value. I want guys like Ben that are in this position to go out here and put up big numbers to catapult himself to at least create like trade value as well. Yeah. So you got to chase the upside. I don't want wide receiver 7, wide receiver 8 on my roster. I want the tight end that can become a tight end 1 for any random year. I want the running back that can slide into a starting role and give me a lot of points. And I think at least Ben Sinnott for the cost right now, if I am buying a tight end, mind you, because there's not a whole lot out there I really want to go get. This is where I'm going to go get over like maybe even like he's kind of the upside of like a Pat Freiermuth, but younger.
Yeah. When you look at Ben Sinnott, I'm with you. I love the Kingsbury offense for the tight end. It's obviously a very fantasy friendly offense for that position. So if I can get somebody that has the draft capital that is in the right offense, like as much as we want to love specific prospects, there's only a couple guys that transcend offenses, like that are going to be successful in any offense. 95% of the guys, maybe even 98% of the guys, are really dependent on who's the quarterback and what's the offensive scheme. And we figured out that Kingsbury and Jaden Daniels, it's a pretty good system and scheme and quarterback for fantasy football success. So as much as, I am scouting the player for receiver and for running back and quarterback, tight end is probably the most. All of them are dependent on other things to some extent, but tight end seems arguably the most dependent on the scheme and situation.
I totally agree with that, and I do like Sinnott in that offense as well, because we've already seen it happen. We've seen this happen to Ertz before, where he kind of he does well for a year, they draft a guy, and it just naturally is going to progress kind of over. Ertz is, I think, 34, right? He'll be 35 next year.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have he still looks good. He's been operating in the offense. He operated really well in that offense all year last year. But I have a hard time believing that he's going to be able to keep it all together health-wise for another year. So I just think at that age, you're just a lot more susceptible to all sorts of injuries. So I think it's just a matter of time before Sinnott gets on the field, and we already know what that offense can kind of do for a tight end, having seen it with Zach Ertz. So I think Sinnott's kind of the next guy to kind of slide right into an offense after what's his name did it as well, McBride over there in Arizona. So
yeah, he's super athletic. Yeah, I remember at the combine he was in the 90th percentile for tight end. So I love Jaden Daniels so much. I want to be tied to anything that's going to be running his offense. He's just opened up so much. Definitely, with his mobility, he's going to really open up the middle of the field when he starts to roll outside of pocket to really benefit a super athletic guy like Ben Sinnott.
Yeah, no doubt. Middle linebackers that should be dropping and paying attention to a tight end have to keep an eye all of a sudden on this quarterback, just so they don't, get burned for a 15-yard rush right up their rear end because they turned around to follow that tight end behind them. So there's a lot that a guy like that can open up in the middle of the field. So it's a good point.
Who wants to go next for a tight end buy?
I'm going to go for my
go ahead, Matt.
My buy. So before before the wheels fall off, so to speak, Dave, I'm going to go with David Njoku. Last year finished as tight end 10, which, is kind of smack dab at the higher end of that who the heck cares tight end tier. But he did it last year, despite the fact that he missed 5 games in the first 17, I think 6 altogether. So he missed week 18 as well. I only had numbers through week 17, so that's why I said 5 games. But during that time, if you take away the games that he missed and look at the points per game, he was actually tight end 4 with 13.5 points per game. So he's really, his numbers are better than that tight end 10 and kind of lumped in with everyone else. And put on top of that, weeks 1 through 7 with Deshaun Watson, he was tight end 20. He did miss some games there as well. He had an injury and missed 3 games. But he only averaged 10.625 points per game with Watson. And then weeks 8 through 17 with Watson gone, he was tight end 8. He also missed 2 games in that stretch and had a bye, but he averaged 15.143 points per game. So there was a big time difference between him with or without Watson, almost a 5-point swing when he didn't have Deshaun Watson in the game. And we all expect Deshaun Watson to not be playing next year. He re-injured that Achilles tendon. He had to have a second surgery on it. All indications are that he's basically missing all of 2025, which should bring to the end to his career with the Browns, I would hope, or expect anyway. So what, similarly to Jerry Jeudy, when we were talking about him on last show, Njoku's things aren't going to get worse for Njoku. They're only going to get better. Whomever they figure out, if it is Kirk Cousins, who we kind of speculated last show, we've all seen Kirk Cousins feed a tight end. TJ Hawkinson's the last guy I can think of that performed ultra well at that position and had a good wide receiver on the outside and a fantastic wide receiver on the outside in Justin Jefferson. So I think in Cleveland, if Cousins comes there, I think that's kind of the ideal situation I have in my brain, and Njoku could be the number 2 option in the passing game pretty easily, and really kind of flourish and be closer to those tight end 4 numbers and actually be a difference maker next season, as opposed to just kind of falling into the pack of all those other people, as long as he stays healthy. I mean, he missed 6 games last season. A couple towards the end, I think were just kind of that season was lost, and let's just chalk it up, get this guy kind of healthy going into the offseason. So I don't think it's like nothing major or anything like that, but Njoku has turned himself into one of these kind of difference makers as far as he's in the right situation, which is what Garrett was talking about, right? Like there's Jerry Jeudy and there's a bunch of unproven people, and it's Jerry Jeudy and Njoku, kind of the top dogs here in this offense for next season at least. And they don't have money to go out and spend. So they're not going to be bringing in a bunch of high-priced guys. They're kind of stuck with what they have. So I really do think Njoku's got a pretty decent shot next year of being one of those at least top 5 guys. If something crazy happens and he's all consistent all year, he could be a top 3 guy. I think he's that talented.
Yeah, I think he's absolutely fantastic buy, man. And you mentioned when he wasn't without Watson, or one of the worst quarterbacks of all time, Dorian Thompson-Robinson as well. And you pair him with a guy like Jameis Winston, averaging over 15 points per game, tight end 4 overall. If you just go ahead and project that back to the offense that Stefanski kind of wants to run anyways, like the play action, throw the football offense there. Go back to Joe Flacco, those last 6 weeks of the season in 2023. David Njoku is tight end 1 overall. So you're talking about a differential between tight end 1 overall when he has a quarterback playing play action that can actually play football, and tight end 4. So tremendous upside, not a lot of options out there in Cleveland. So a fantastic buy for where he's going in startups, and kind of like one of my last like values at tight end. Like if I miss early on tight end, like David Njoku, somebody I circle on there. And again, going to be 28 years old. So look at that guy. That guy is like a superhero, right?
Yep.
Like odds of him, you probably got at least 4 more years of David Njoku on your roster going out there and making plays. And for a player who's literally gotten better every single year of his NFL career.
Yeah, he just seems like he seems like he's been around for 15 years. But it's been 8 or something, right? 8 years or something like that, because he came in the league at 20 and he was so raw, and he is getting better year in and year out, I feel like. Sorry, Gary, go ahead.
This isn't necessarily something that you can always hang your hat on, but in an era where we have, especially on teams that are struggling teams, so many guys want out, want traded. We hear grumblings and things like that. David Njoku's been the complete opposite. Like, he has been all in for the city, trying to keep guys here, doing all the fan stuff. Like, he is bought in to this team for better or worse. He has been all in. And you want a guy like that. Like, you want a guy that his head's in the right place. He's focused on what he needs to do to make his team better. And so he is, that's not something that you can always hang your hat on. But I think in this scenario, in this case, it is a big deal, because the Browns have not had a lot to be excited about, but he's one of those few bright spots, and he continues to be a bright spot despite it being kind of a frustrating time. All right, we'll go over to my tight end buy, and this one it still feels like a layup to me. I am still absolutely buying all the Jonnu Smith that I can absolutely buy. I've talked about him a little bit here and there, but I want to make sure I hammered the point home. I think he is still being severely, severely undervalued. I've checked a few different ADPs, anywhere from 18 to 20 as far as the tight end goes. And so when you're looking in that range, we're talking even outside of that range that we're talking about, where all the guys are kind of the same, despite him actually being one of the difference makers. He was tight end 4 this past season. And especially the second half of the year, I mean, from week 10 on, he was the top tight end. Like, he was an absolute monster. The last 8 weeks of the season, he either had 8 targets or a touchdown in every single game. And some of those games, he had both of those things. So he was just ultra consistent. And the thing that really helped solidify this, like I talked about earlier, I think scheme, system, and quarterback is one of the biggest deciding factors on how well a tight end is going to do. Well, when I look at the scheme and system and quarterback, we have the same head coach, McDaniels. We have the same offensive coordinator in Frank Smith, and the same quarterback in Tua. Nothing is changing. And with how much money they have invested in Tyreek and Jalen Waddle, I don't necessarily see them making any big splashy moves. Maybe they bring in a rookie. They have what's his name that they drafted this year out of the slot that I like. I can't think of his name off the tip of my tongue, from Virginia. But either way, I don't see them bringing in anybody. So this feels like they're going to more or less say, hey, let's run it back. And for that cheap of a price to say, hey, I can get a guy that was arguably one of the, if not the most consistent tight end outside of Bowers and McBride this past year, it just feels like stealing. And I get it, 30 feels old, but at tight end, it's really not. We just talked about going into age 35 season, what Zach Ertz was doing. Travis Kelce was still one of the top tight ends at the same age. At 30, there's still plenty of years left for him to be a successful player in this offense. So for the cheapest guy of all the players that we're talking about right now, I think he has still the upside to be the most productive. So for me, I still feel like Jonnu Smith is absolutely stealing at the position.
Yeah, I love the value there as well. And honestly, the guy who I have as my sell, it's not like I hate the guy, but I love the value I can get in return. And I'm going to tell you guys about that here in a second on Jonnu. Matt, you got anything on Jonnu you want to say?
No, I mean, I think that's a great buy. Obviously hugely, kind of came out of nowhere this year, but I would expect him to just keep rolling in that same position as well, just like you, Garrett. So nothing's changed there, except they brought in what's his name from Houston to be the passing game coordinator. Slowick, but nothing. I wouldn't expect that to change anything from the tight end position. So big time, man. Yeah, that's a nice buy.
All right. So before we get into our sells, I got to tell you about my guys over at myffpc.com. For the last 15 years, this is like one of the best hosting sites you can play Dynasty fantasy football on. They've, over the last 15 years, they give you an opportunity to play any kind of, fit Dynasty you want to play, Superflex, PPR, standard, any you want to go about it, and high stake options, right? Up to $2,500 that offers the security of a league never folded. And right now they got all their orphan teams out there. So right now it's like eBay shopping, right? You go out there and you go bid on teams, right? It could be like $1,000 team, $100 team that you can get for like $60, and they have some good draft capital. You could say, hey, I want to go ahead and get some Ash and Genty shares. Let me go find teams at the 1-1, because they'll show you all the draft picks, they'll show you who are in their roster, and you go out there and kind of rebuild a dynasty team at any kind of value you see fit out there. Right now, you can use the promo code NERDS, NERDS, and get $25 off any team you've been on for the first team. So you can find yourself a $100 team, get it for $75. Get in there, hit the rookie draft picks, make some trades, and get yourself to the promised land with the security of knowing the league's going to be there long term, and you're going to get your money, right? Because it's a licensed gamer. So get out there, go to myffpc.com, myffpc.com. Use that promo code NERDS and expand your dynasty portfolio. So sells. So tight end sell for me, guys. Like I have Mark Andrews, because again, it's kind of like hard to sell tight end, right? Like all those guys, yeah, you want to buy some of those guys and game on your guy. That's easy. But like to sell those guys, nobody's out there necessarily, hey, I'm buying Jonnu Smith. Like obviously, Garrett, you are, and we're saying that, but like a lot of people aren't going out there to attack that position. So Mark Andrews right now has an ADP of tight end 6 overall. And for where I view this going for Mark Andrews right now, which again, to me, it's certainly not a guarantee. I would much rather just go get a guy who's the same age and Jonnu Smith and then get my plus on top. I'd rather get like David Njoku and get my plus on top. So doesn't mean I don't believe in Mark Andrews, but like I think he's a hover right around this tight end 6 range. Maybe he finishes tight end 4. Who knows? But I think there's a better chance that Jonnu Smith and David Njoku can possibly jump him. And you say, why would make me say me out at the ADP of tight end 6? And last year, I mean, just he had that average year for a tight end that you see: 43 receptions, 612 yards, 7 touchdowns. So still finished as a solid year, tight end 6 overall. So he wasn't bad, but I am worried about like the guys that can jump him and push him down, and he pushes him down into that tight end 8, tight end 9 range potentially. But even if he hangs out here, I can get guys in this value because he went over his points per game per year average. He averaged 14, went down all the way down to 12.1, so almost 2 points per game. Entered in year 30, which I'm not saying the years are terrible there for him, because like you just mentioned about Jonnu Smith, like he probably could play for another 2, 3, 4 years of solid production. But what worries me here is the young guys that are producing, and that's Zay Flowers and Isaiah Likely. Like they're playing a lot more 12 personnel in Todd Monken's offense. They just signed him to an extension. And right now out there, if you go back to 2023 and 2024, definitely 2024, he's averaging 10 points per game out there for the Baltimore Ravens, Isaiah Likely. So he's somebody who's being involved in this roster. And Garrett, a guy who you've been pretty bullish on, Zay Flowers, he really established himself this year to give the Baltimore Ravens finally a true presence in a wide receiver 1, or for a guy that can come out there and produce. So I think with the emergence of Likely, run the 12 personnel, having Derrick Henry, even if they bring in another running back out there, and the emergence of Zay Flowers, like it makes me think like Mark Andrews is the back end of that second tier tight ends right now. And still living on name value, you can go get a Jonnu Smith plus and a Njoku plus, and I'd much rather go ahead and chase that upside or neighborhood, which is going to definitely probably, in my eyes, be in the same neighborhood, and a class that's super deep at running back, and just go ahead and get that plus. Like if somehow I can get a decent second and Jonnu Smith for Mark Andrews, or just like I'm pretty happy with doing that.
Yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you're talking about Isaiah Likely, and that's he's basically a Mark Andrews replacement. You're not getting any different production out of the two of these guys. One guy is 5 years younger. I mean, if you're an NFL executive, it doesn't take long to figure out who you need to keep on your team long term, and who who you're going to let kind of sunset himself off the roster. So I do think Isaiah Likely is going to be the guy there kind of long term, and I guess we'll just see how long Mark Andrews can kind of hold on in that position. But they are like a 1-for-1 replacement, so you're not missing anything. I think either way by going with one guy over the other. So at this point, I'm fine getting rid of Mark Andrews. I'm not, 29 years old isn't super old, but I do feel like it's starting to feel a little old. I don't know. For Mark Andrews, he looked like he slowed down a little bit or something last year, especially at the beginning of it. I mean, so maybe it was kind of like, wasn't he? He was injured the year before that, right? That was the hip drop.
Playoffs, he broke his leg.
The hip drop tackle.
Drop tackle.
So maybe it that kind of zapped him early on in the season, because towards the end of the year he looked all right, and the numbers came
stepped it
around
up second half of the year.
Right. So
it's not like being out on a guy like Mark Andrews.
Yeah.
It's just about, hey, could be is what it is. Because I said that 12 personnel, even when they ran that 12 personnel, when two tight ends line up on the field, Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely saw almost 17% of those targets. So they are looking at them, and more so where they kind of hurt two Andrews is they're really targeting Likely more in the red zone as well, which kind of, again, if you're not getting those touchdowns at tight end without the yardage, you're in big trouble.
Yeah, no doubt. And Likely has, he had 39 receptions, 439 and 6 through week 17. And Mark Andrews was like 51, 619 and 10. So, I mean, it was, if you tweak the ratio the opposite way and give Likely more targets and more receptions, his numbers are going to look really similar to what Mark Andrews looked like. And to get 5 years, more of a fresh body, I guess, from the Ravens perspective, it's eventually going to make sense to move on from Mark Andrews and just go with Isaiah Likely, in my opinion.
Definitely want to re-sign Likely. It could be the death sentence to a guy like Mark Andrews.
I feel like Mark Andrews is similar to the Terry McLaurin of tight ends. When you look at his targets over the past 4 seasons on a per game basis, because he missed 2 games in 2022 and he missed 7 games in 2023, but on a per game basis over the last 4 seasons, averaging 9 targets a game, 7.5, 6.1, 4.1 this year. 4.1 targets per game. Now, granted, part of that was the beginning of the year with how slow it was, but still, you look even towards the end of the season, the last couple weeks, 7, 3, 8, 2, like none of that inspires confidence into you. 6 and then 2 again. Like it was just very hit and miss. But what buoyed him was touchdowns, similar
10.
to Terry McLaurin.
Yeah.
Like he had actually 11 this year. He had 11 touchdowns.
I bet.
Yeah. So with that being said, if he were to go back down to, which was a career high, if you were to go back down to what you would expect out of that target range, you're looking at more of the 5 to 6 range. And if you were to take 5 to 6 touchdowns away from this guy, all of a sudden he looks real rough. So I think that's 14. The biggest thing. Yep.
Yeah. People in my line of work, Garrett, like to call that going downhill.
That's a good thing to call that in your line of work.
Yep. That makes sense, Rich.
It's because when you look at a graph, it looks like a hill and it's going down.
That makes sense.
Unless you flip it upside down.
Well,
or you stand on your head.
Then we're just launching you.
Or you just start at the other end.
Ramp. That's true too. All right, who do you got? Who's the next guy on the list here?
G, you're up, man.
Am I up?
Yep.
All right. So for me, I had a few different guys that I thought were pretty good options for sell at the position. And so I went back and forth on like, which was actually the best sell? Because honestly, kind of like we talked in the beginning, I'm willing to sell probably all of them to some extent, but I keep coming back to the same thing of who's the quarterback, who's the coordinators and all that kind of stuff. And that makes Evan Engram the sell for me. He's another one that's kind of in that range of good tight ends, but nothing that's a difference maker now at this point. We saw a little bit of a dip from him this year, even though the targets were still very legitimate this year. We saw a dip from him overall. at the position. But the biggest thing is we've got a new coaching staff in here. Like, we've got a brand new offensive coordinator, a brand new coach, and you never know exactly how all of that is going to play out, how much they're going to prioritize getting the ball to the tight end versus getting the ball to Brian Thomas Jr. or to whatever other receiving options they bring in here, because you've got to imagine they're going to bring somebody else in here to catch some passes. And then we talked
Davis,
about it.
baby.
Dave. Come on,
There it is.
man.
He is back, technically. He is back. So, but all that being said, we even talked about Brenton Strange as a guy that could be trending in a better direction as well. So does this coaching staff like Strange just as much as they like Evan Engram? Is he a player that, they maybe decide to move on from because he's only got 1 year left on his deal? So all of that doesn't necessarily spell good news. And he already is the age of 30. He's going to be turning 31. Is that a death sentence? No, but it's not trending in the right direction if you're not somebody that's a perfect fit for the new offense. Could he be? Maybe. But with any change at all of that, I never want to bank on that guy having the same role that he had before. And so for me, I think Evan Engram is probably the most likely sell of that group. But put literally any name in there on tight ends from basically tight end 5 to 15 or so, and I'm probably not going to argue you.
I mean, I like that Engram, bringing him up into this conversation, because I do think we've seen him in another spot look good then bad, with a different coaching staff, and then kind of have to leave to reestablish himself in the right situation for himself. So we don't know if Peterson's if he had gotten better and improved, or if Peterson's system fit him so well, and that's kind of why he took off it there. And similarly, we won't know kind of how he fits in Liam Cohen's new system. So we'll see. It is a lot up in the air, and to your point, I don't even have anybody. I don't have a tight end to sell, because I feel like if your name is not Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, Sam Laporta, and TJ Hawkinson, and of course David Njoku, who I just said go out and buy, I'll sell literally anyone. Throw Kincaid in there now. Like he was a guy that felt real untouchable for me last year. Throw him in there. Kyle Pitts,
very touchable.
Kyle Pitts used to be in that. Throw him in that. Just give me value, and I will trade you one of these tight. You have a hunch. Here you go. Have them. It's fine. I don't even care. Good luck. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, good luck with your hunch. I don't know.
What a nice opening line to their teammate. Like, hey, you got a hunch?
You got a hunch or something? Go for it, man.
Yeah.
Here you go.
In a startup,
hunches?
in a startup, honestly, it's even like, even though I like Laporta and I like Hawkinson, it's another one where Hawkinson, I know he was coming off the injury, but he didn't play amazing this year. How is he going to be with, a new quarterback again? Like, honestly, if I'm in a startup and your name isn't Brock Bowers or Trey McBride, I'm probably the last guy to take a tight end. And then I'll take 2 or 3 that I like that are available, and just do the shotgun approach. Like,
I'd panic. I'm definitely I'd be
why?
the opposite. Like, I have to get Laporta. I gotta get Hawkinson, because they have a chance to be tight end 1 overall, and they're probably
so
gonna be
does
the top
Jonnu
4.
Smith. Like, why not just wait?
So I bet I like the longevity of Sam Laporta significantly more than Jonnu Smith, and the odds significantly more than Jonnu Smith.
Listen, I like Laporta. I like the guys that I mentioned. After that, I feel like
me too, Matt. I'm not listening to Garrett's blasting me.
I feel like we were operating under this, false kind of narrative for a couple of years that the tight end position was getting better, and we thought it was.
Every year it's getting better.
We're about to add a bunch of good ones again. Here we go.
Bullshit. I'm fucking no. It's not happening. You think it's happening, and 2 of these other guys are going to fall off the list if one of them comes out. And that's where we're at. We're in this rotating door of 4 good guys, and that's all we're going to ever have.
Hello, Tyler Ward.
We'll see, and then who's going to fall off? T.J. Hawkins will break his knee again, and that'll be it. We'll get one guy in, one guy out. We'll have our 4. It'll be great. I just feel like that's kind of the life we live in right now, the tight end world we live in. So I don't know. I'm starting
all hail Brock Bowers.
Exactly. Like we had Travis Kelce at the top forever. All of a sudden, this guy Brock Bowers comes into the league. He's amazing, and Travis Kelce just disappears.
And every time, like if you're in a startup, and you're in a first round pick, and you're like, God, dude, like I just got to take Brock Bowers here. I'm like, do I really want, like, this is a super flex tight end premium draft. Do I really want to take Brock Bowers here? And then you just like look at like how much taller he is than everybody else, right? Like it's just like, man,
taller. I wish I was a baller. I wish.
We're not playing basketball. He doesn't even dunk. He doesn't jump the slam dunk. It's just like the true unicorn, like almost like just a one of one. Like you can't get anybody else like him. So it really is to have the have-nots. It's like you said, peak Travis Kelce in his prime, right? Like it's like if you had Travis Kelce, like it's kind of a cheat code.
Yeah,
he wasn't. No, he was a total cheat code. Yes. I was sorry. I was miming out the rest of that. I wish I was a baller.
It's a great song.
It really was
a great song.
It really was.
I was never a big fan.
Fantastic song.
All right, we'll be back next week. I don't know what we're talking about next week, but it'll probably be around Dynasty Fantasy Football. Maybe Garrett out there with a baseball bat. You never know what you tune into. But check us out. We'll be around talking some Dynasty.
Adios.
Hey, Nerd Herd, Dynasty Nerds has an incredible new offer from Underdog Fantasy for new customers. When you sign up as a new customer, you'll get a chance at their new customer free pick. But that's not all. Underdog is also offering incredible deposit bonuses. Use the promo code NERDS when you first sign up, and Underdog will give you up to $1,000 in bonus cash with your first deposit. That's right, $1,000 to kickstart your fantasy football journey. Don't miss out on this fantastic opportunity. Head over to UnderdogFantasy.com or download the Underdog app. Sign up today with promo code NERDS and start your journey to fantasy football glory today. Must be 18, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. In New York, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY. And in Tennessee, call 1-800-889-9789.